Tay, how was attendance last week?
I thought it was pretty good.
Oh,
I think we had 10 or so people, maybe a little more. I don't know. Al Cap was there, I think.
nice.
I don't remember honestly.
It all blends together, huh? Oh, let me get all snuggled in here. Excuse me for working from my couch like a lazy bum. All right, well, it's 3 o'clock, so might as well launch right into this. Um, so for today's workshop, I really want to just square away everything on this LP draft that Peso wrote. So why don't I go on ahead and drop that in the forum? Here, I'll drop that in the chat right now. Okay, there we go. So I posted that in voice chat about where the draft is. So looking through this, I think it looks really good. You know, for me, I have felt like we have discussed this in, not only one town. I think like multiple town halls. We've worked on it in a workshop. It's been discussed pretty thoroughly, in my opinion. So I just kind of want to make sure that we've captured everything right and that this has like an easy path to going to vote and then hopefully quick consensus with the token holders. Reading through this, I think that I really um, only have one or two hangups on his thing. I think that the first one is looking at what's been done with the LP Rook or with the Treasury Rook or the Treasury funds from the LP and their rewards that they've accrued. So for me, I don't want to include any statements that say that we should use that Rook for something specific yet. I don't know if anyone has any specific opinions on that, but like right here, it's stated that these funds farm and subsidize X Rook APY. Um, I I don't know if we need to include that in this because it kind of seems secondary to the actual root proposal here of ending emissions and committing to sunsetting the liquidity pools. What we do with that Rook, I mean, right now I would consider that Rook having just been earned and accrued by the Treasury, and we can write a separate KIP for what to do with the Rook that's been accrued. If anyone's got other thoughts that they feel like it's necessary for us to include the usage of that accrued Rook rewards in this proposal, I'm happy to hear about it.
How much Rook has these LP positions accrued?
So I believe it's something in the ballpark of about 6,000 or 7,000 Rook over the last year.
Okay. I kind of agree with you, just trimming down the proposal to make it simple, and then I think that would just be easiest, but it's not
Right.
my KIP.
Yeah, and maybe Peso finds some time today and shows. But that was my thought, is that like I have no qualms using that Rook for anything specific. Like if we use it for staking APY, like that's totally chill, but we should write a separate KIP for that and let the group decide on that as a whole. I don't think it should affect us ending the liquidity pool program.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, so that was one bit of feedback that we'll ask Peso to admit. I mean, I can change that, but it's his, so I'm not going to use admin power for that. The other thing I just wanted to quickly revisit was how much of our funds we leave in the LPs. You know, I think that we personally can, in terms of I mean I'm talking about Ninja. I think Ninja can operate just fine with 5 million in each pool. I think that's you know, Jay-Z has said that he'd be okay with that. I did go and ask a few of our other keepers, and only one of them said that they still use our flash loans and they use them
Ja,
very regularly.
ik begrijp het. Ik begrijp het.
Alchemist, you have something to say there?
Dat is leuk voor blokken. Dat
I might-
kan
Ja.
ook leuk.
I
Je
might
zal
go
het best leuk vinden, ja.
Ik
I'm
wist
gonna go
niet
ahead
dat
and
het
mute
Heinz
you.
was. Ik dacht dat hij gewoon zo het bos
Sorry,
in
bud.
ging. Maar dat is een bos, maar dat is een
You
Heinz.
can DM
Okay.
you can
Dus ik
DM
kan
me
niet gaan-
if
En,
you're ready to
ja,
speak. But yeah, there we go. Makes sense. Man, that was a complete train of thought lost. What I was saying was that I talked to another keeper about the amounts, and they said that they've taken flash loans from us in the 8 digits before, and said that, you know, they would have liked to have seen about 8 or 9 million in the ETH pool. But I don't think that we have to cater to them specifically. I think that they still will be happy with us still leaving, you know, 4 to 5 million in each pool. So I did just want to provide that feedback to everybody. And if we're still good at leaving 5 million in each pool, then we can just say that we're all chill with that. But if we did want to give a better experience to one of our keepers, we could leave, say, some more funds in the ETH or wrapped ETH pool for them to utilize.
How much of difference will make? Like, will it be substantially for them?
I you know, I'm not exactly sure. I could probably ask them, you know, how many flash loans they've taken out in the last month that were greater than 5 million from us. I mean, or I could see if someone on our team could run that. That is probably some bit of a lift in terms of writing a script and running that. So I don't, you know, if we really need to do that, you know, that's an ask that we can make. But you know, if we feel like we don't need to do that, and it's only a few per month or something like that, then you know, I don't know if we need to bend over for them.
Yeah, I would love to even chat with them directly, because, you know, there's opportunity cost there by keeping those funds there, and I don't know, like, you know, we'll have more data from once CG's live, but if, you know, that one individual keeper is only producing, you know, whatever dollar amount of revenue based off of the having that flash loan access, versus if we had those funds, let's just say, invested in some protocol earning some yield. You know, there has to be some kind of break-even analysis that's done, and you know, I'm not able to do that until it's live to some degree. But just something for us to keep in mind, that we could get yield off of that revenue that could be in excess of whatever revenue that they end up giving back through their efforts by having that liquidity in there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And just because they took a massive flash loan out doesn't mean that, you know, they are generating a massive bid for us as well. It's not always apples to apples there. So, you know, who knows? Maybe an $8 million flash loan actually really only was just a rebalance of two different stable coins that netted them at, you know, a couple $100. So, you know, it's, you know, I only bring it up just because I want to make sure everyone has as much information as possible. But I also don't have more information than the feedback I got.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is unfortunately a wait and see situation where we just need to see how CG actually operates, and, you know, the metrics from that. So
Gotcha. Yeah, so yeah, they might even have some other options, whether it's paying a little bit from Aave or someone else. So yeah, I would say that we wouldn't need to factor this in as much, from my opinion at least. Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments, or just like, yeah, let's full send this proposal to, and get the SoFunds ready to get this reviewed? Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts on this?
I came in late, so I apologize. But did I think this was mentioned on the town hall? But did we talk to him, to Pesa, that is, about removing the section about like the investing, that liquidity that we do pull out? Like I think we mentioned taking that out, so it's not.
Yeah. That was like the first point that I brought up. It's just
All right.
like not determining or not having it included in this proposal, so it's more streamlined.
Perfect.
But yeah, if no one else has any comments on this, then I'm happy to relay this to the author here and see if he can make those updates soon, and then let the SoFunds know that I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we have pretty solid community consensus on this.
Yeah, everyone wants the emissions to be zero. Like,
yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, are there other drafts out there that people want to look at, or are there topics that we think that as a group we should write a KIP about? Is there anything else that people have got on their minds for this workshop?
Yeah, I got something. I know I hopped on pretty late, but with our audits pretty much completed, is the team probably looking into reaching out to Nexus and providing some cover? That's a pretty big issue. Everybody's like, for the most part, like anybody they invest, they pretty much feel a bit safer keeping their stuff on the centralized exchange. If we're gonna have people, staking their rooks or whatever, I think it'll be best to look into some coverage in case, knock on wood, something happens and the protocol gets compromised in any way.
So you're talking about, like, yeah, some kind of DAO funded insurance is what you're
Yes,
looking
like Nexus Mutual is one that Banker uses for their staking, something along the lines. They're pretty much the only ones I really know. I know Armor was one, but they got popped, and there's a huge issue between them paying back somebody that tried to make a claim. I forgot, this happened like a year or two ago, but yeah, something along the lines of just like some decentralized insurance working with, I don't know, Nexus Mutual. They're like the top dog in the space.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Nexus. We have talked with Bridge, which I think offers individual coverage for people. And actually, I think Rook was one of their bigger coverage purchasers or purchasees, whatever you want to call it. And that was when I last talked to them a couple months ago. So, I think it would be something to look at as a community. Is this something that, we as a DAO want to spend on for everybody, or is this something that should more be in the individual responsibilities of each token holders to ensure their own coins? I don't have an answer on that. But I think it's a good thing to bring up with staking. For me, I know that the staking contract is the same one that we see with our LPs right now. So it's verified, audited, reviewed. there have been zero security issues with that so far, luckily. So we're good there. So, if we think about historically, I don't believe it's something that we purchased for those LPs. So I wouldn't say there's precedent for it yet. But, if this is something that everybody's very, very interested in as a DAO, and, I think that that's something that can be drafted up and be considered by the community.
Yeah, for sure. Just in time for the hopefully next quarter this year, being able to stake Rook. I know that's hopefully pretty close to getting done. So I guess we could just discuss it a bit more then. But just that's just the
Well,
biggest
I
thing.
think
You
that we
hear
can,
about people. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think we can discuss it now. As we're closing in here, so getting ahead of that conversation is not a bad idea. So I wouldn't even very much. I am not an expert on coverage or things like that. I wouldn't know how much we need to do. I mean, is this something where we just invite Nexus and Bridge or whoever else to come write a proposal on our forum, and then we talk about it at a town hall? Is this something we need to do all the legwork on as a community ourselves? I don't know where to start there.
Me neither. But just know that like their fees are pretty. They're pretty decent fees. I think it's like 2.5% fee on I forget what was being staked. But yeah, it's something that the team will need to, whoever's in charge of that, reaching out to whoever and just start that discussion, just get the terms and conditions for getting that started or whatever, and then just could be brought up
Oh wow!
to
Hey,
everybody.
I see. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's something where they'll come on. Like we could have them come on a community call and answer our questions, and then we would kip it. I don't think they kip it as much.
Yeah.
And they have reached out to us in the past. We just weren't really there yet. So I know they'd be happy to come talk to us.
Yeah, and if this is something where we can schedule an upcoming community call with them and invite them on for that. And, if that community call goes pretty well and people are happy with the questions that are asked of them, and, it looks like they want to write a proposal on our forum, I'm happy to go through that route. Looking at, looks like about 2 weeks ago, Wes just linked a conversation you two had about that as well. And there's a Bancor proposal there as well. I think it'd be good for folks to read through that, and this would probably give some more light on what's being talked about here if you're not familiar with coverage or things like that. So if you look at the voice chat channel and you follow the link that Wes just posted, you can see that Bancor governance proposal.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's better to because if it's whatever the percentage, if it's 2.5% off the balance, that's basically it's not one for one exactly, but in reality, to some degree, it is taking away potential yield that all stakers could get if you just transfer that 2.5% to just staking rewards. And then maybe there's some investors who would want that additional yield versus some people who want that additional security. So giving people that freedom of choice between those two options is definitely my preferred opinion, because again, we want to maximize what people can do. But I think what we could do as a DAO, if we do bring in these different options, is really kind of come in and say, look, we're offering access to this full community and a platform for you to have conversations to really gain a lot of recurring revenue. And we want to use our weight and make sure we're trying to get the best purchase price by kind of using economies of scale to do that. And so maybe the DAO can kind of negotiate not a package, but some kind of structure that it's maybe better than if you just went solo. So maybe that's an option as well.
Right. Something else that I was thinking about is that you know, who knows, maybe the community really wants to push to see, excuse me, X Rook collateralized for lending markets or something like that. And maybe that's where this would be of more importance as well. And so, you know, I'm not really sure. I think it's a great topic to have brought up, and I'm happy to see, you know, where this goes.
You mean X Rook as collateral, so you can borrow against your Rook, basically?
Yeah, I mean, just like having regular Rook collateralized, you know, it would depend on us getting an oracle for that, and you know, finding a partner that would offer, you know, us that. So whether that was Compound or Aave or Fey or Rari Fuse Pools, whatever that, you know, whatever they might be. You know, if that's something that gets really, you know, pushed by the community, you know, then that is, you know, maybe something that we would like to see coverage for. But I don't even know if coverage would work in that way. So I say all this to say that much more research needs to be done, it seems like, and some conversations need to be had.
Definitely, I see long term, but short term, with such a bad liquidity and a volatile token, that would be really bad idea to use Rook as collateral. I mean, in case of cascade liquidations, we're gonna go to zero probably. It happens to other projects.
Right. So it would seem like maybe timing isn't right for that until liquidity is changed and token price is probably in a different position.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys know about Wood Trade, but they had a situation where the price basically went to zero on their platform because everyone was trading with leverage their token, and when the market drops, they basically reach zero. And even with their old network liquidity providers and such, they couldn't handle the flow. So I really like to see that long term, not short term.
It's good insight. Thank you.
Maybe on the subject of liquidity, Deets, do we want to talk about convex here? I know you posted kind of in the other chat, but
Yeah, sure.
is that in scope right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, you know, for folks that have been following our convex operations, you know, we are at a crossroads with, you know, I guess what would have happened naturally. We're at an unlocking period where, you know, we actually got unlocked early by Convex needing to upgrade their vote lock contract, and so they gave us they unlocked everybody and opened up a grace period for you to determine what you want to do with your assets. That grace period is coming to an end for us because that's it. One of our unlocks happens before the end of the grace period, and so they have some whatever kind of loophole that we might miss out on one round of bribe revenue if we don't relock our CVX before the 30th. So looking at what we have kind of options wise, you know, option one would be relocking our CVX, and that's 4 more months of what we've been doing for the last 4 months. Option two would be like selling some of our CVX or exiting the position or whatever, you know, that might be, or just not locking it up and making a different decision. And then a third option that I had put out there was if we really, you know, what we care about is exposure to the Curve ecosystem, you know, we could take that CVX and turn it into CVX CRV and stake it for about 40% and that way we still have full exposure to, you know, the Curve ecosystem, but we don't rely on bribes and things. It's more revenue based off of Curve working itself, and it's predictable. And the key thing is that it's not locked. You know, we can make decisions to do anything with it at any time. There's no, you know, unstaking fees or anything like that. So it grants us major flexibility where the locking is extremely inflexible. So, you know, it's interesting for us to kind of look at this as a whole. You know, some of the goals that we originally set out for, you know, I would say we've achieved a few of them, and we have not achieved a few of the others. You know, thinking about the original intentions of KIP5 and what we could do with this CVX. You know, the number one thing I think we have not achieved from kind of the hopes of that KIP was spinning up that Curve factory pool, and trying to incentivize, you know, the liquidity on Curve for the Rook token. Something that we've been very successful at has been, you know, turning that bribe revenue into more for our treasury and what we're going to use it for. You know, I think that the committee that's managing that has done a great job of giving input on things. We've, you know, outperformed Vodium pretty much every time. So I would say that that's been successful. On the, let's call it OTC votes or partnerships aspect, I would say that that has not been very successful. We've had one kind of engaged partner talk about that, but the terms aren't necessarily exactly in our favor. And if you think about the total number of protocols we could potentially work with that would be interested in our votes, it's only a handful of them. You know, it's not like there's more people getting these gauges frequently, and the number of people paying for bribes is, you know, just barely above double digits, and some of them are bribing at a point that they have no need for us because it's not even 5% of the amount of votes that they get in a standard voting cycle. So really, there's only like 4 to 6 protocols we could work with on these votes. So, you know, I think the biggest challenge has been how, let's call it stingy, the Curve governance system has been on giving out these kind of gauges. So, you know, I don't know if we can rely on the hope that we get that to push CVX, to push the rest of KIP5 forward, you know.
Yeah, so can you talk more about that maybe? So my understanding is that setting up the factory pool is permissionless, right? So we can set up the factory pool, no problem. But then to get the gauge, like he's saying, requires it to pass governance. And so is our, like where is that assessment, I guess, coming from, Dietz, that we are not going to be able to get a gauge proposal passed? I believe, I don't know, is there a quorum to even create a gauge proposal? I would think that we have enough to at least make the quorum. But I mean, to me, like that, this is a central question, right? Because this was the intention of the KIP. I think the primary intention was deepening our liquidity in a sustainable way with Curve, right? Through directing Curve emissions, and essentially like playing Curve wars. And then the secondary objective was income and potential like OTC partnerships of bribing, which it sounds like that hasn't quite materialized. I think there's still reason to believe like it could. And, you know, I think you make a good point. Like, we never bought as much CVX as we intended, right? So we have maybe a smaller vote share than we kind of intended to sort of drive both of those things. And I think it's worth assessing, right? Are we still in service of the mission of KIP5, or is it no longer feasible? In which case, exiting maybe makes sense. And to address kind of what you said, I mean, I don't know if like something like CVX curve makes sense. I think at that point, that's just a totally different ballgame. Like if we're talking about just trying to generate revenue for our treasury, I mean, we need to assess a whole bunch of different things. I mean, why CVX curve and not Bancor? Why that and not go farm on Cosmos?
Or GLP or whatever.
Right. I mean, there's tons of options, and we can, we can get pretty high APRs, right? The question, like, why do we need to be a part of the curve ecosystem at that point? Or, should we just be assessing anything? So I think that is a central question for me is like, does it really look like the amount of CVX we have is just not going to accomplish our initial goals of setting up a gouge and voting incentives to it? And if not, so maybe I would like to understand that a bit better. What is the real blocker there? What's the challenge there? And is that something that can be overcome? Is it something that can be overcome diplomatically or like politically? Is it something that can be overcome only by just buying more CVX? And then I think we can kind of go from there.
So to start, I would say that we need someone besides me to do the research on the gauge operations. I would just say that I'm pretty bandwidth strapped on that, and taking that on in addition is going to be a challenge. I currently don't know all the details that will get us.
I can do that potentially, Dietz, because I'm actually DDing the same thing sort of for another project. So, so that I can try. I can get us more details, I guess. I just want to understand kind of what have we done so far. Like, have we tried to get a gouge or to figure out what that's going to take? Have we engaged with governance at all, or like just where are we right now?
I've really mainly done basic temperature checks inside of Convex, and have not had that conversation with, say, the Curve team.
The temperature check is in like you've posted some memes, or like what is a temperature check?
I've talked to a few people over there, and then I continually see what the conversation is around our protocol in their Discord.
Okay, and so people love us there.
Sure. Or the opposite of that. But I will say that very minimal work has been done on the gauge and the liquidity pool over there. Yeah, okay. That's really the long and short of it.
Shahar, I know you mentioned you're doing this for other protocol or another team. Have you had engaged in those conversations on that front personally? I know you're kind of doing analysis, but have you engaged in any kind of conversations like that?
What I've been doing is kind of, there's another protocol that's setting up kind of a similar type of governance structure around creating gouges, right? And so that's really the research I'm doing is more as like a comparable, right, to what Curve is doing. So no, I haven't actually gone through the process of trying to set up a gauge for anything. I have, I do keep an eye from time to time on the Curve governance forum, right? So I see what other, it's instructive to see other people's gouge proposals, right, and how those go. And I think Dietz is right that it's not easy. It's not easy to get a Curve gouge. And that's okay. I mean, that kind of makes it more of a premium, right? When you do get it. So yeah, it sounds like we need to really do, temperature checks is great, but it's hard to kind of assess how accurate that is, right, Dietz? I mean, it's just whoever's in the Discord at the time, right? And we don't even know who these people are.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it seems like it's time, like if we need to make this decision on Convex, buy or sell or relock or whatever, it seems like it's time to really do some of this DD and figure this out.
Correct.
Okay, so you let me know how much Rook you want to pay me, and we'll go from there. No, I will. I'll at least. What I will do, because I'm doing this anyway, and like and I'm going to be doing this kind of imminently. I will at least get some more details around what does it take to get a gouge, and then from there we can determine kind of the blockers, and I guess we can move forward from there.
So looking at here, I can post this in chat. This is the appendix from KIP 5. So reading through the appendix from KIP 5, it looks like we need 96 million VECRV for a quorum. We are obviously nowhere near that with the value of our convex votes. I'm trying to see how much we need. But yeah, so there is some research on that. So if you do look through that, this was the working group before that did all that work.
But time is the enemy right now, right? It's like we don't have a lot of time to do like these in-depth conversations and analysis to assess that, or maybe I just don't understand. I'm not as familiar with like those conversations, how long they take, and what that vetting due diligence process looks like from their end. But it sounds like we need to kind of make a decision much sooner than that, correct?
On relocking, yes,
yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Or we just start missing out on like 150K
every 2 weeks.
So that's our opportunity. So that's our opportunity cost.
Exactly.
Something that I talked about with Matt just in an offhand conversation was, maybe we relock only a portion of it. Thinking about, still getting the votes and the revenue from most of it, but it allows us to be flexible with the other half of the assets, or if we do 50% or something like that. So we still get the recurring revenue that we're getting. We have the option to lock it if we figure out what to do with it. But we also then could do something like, well, it moons back to 60 and we pull a Tetranode and sell a big portion of our stack at a major gain. If we lock that, we have no option to exit the position. So, we already missed out on the 3x that we could have had, and now it's back at break even for us. So, not that we're looking at this as a directional investment, or at least that wasn't the original intention of KIP 5, as pointed out. So that could be an option of we decide to only lock, a portion of it. So, we can still participate and still get revenue, but it buys us more time as well as flexibility of what to do with the asset.
Dietz, may I interrupt you?
Please do.
Let's assume Convex is like $60 next week. How we are going to liquidate the stack without letting everyone front run us? Legit question, because we will have to do a keep or something, right?
I don't believe we do need to do a KIP to liquidate it. I think it is in KIP 5 that we can choose to, at our discretion, unwind.
Yeah, I think that the actual language on the KIP 5 is that it's, let me see if I can pull this up, is that the management of the position will be at the collective discretion of the core team and the community, with execution performed by the core team. So agile response and risk management while leaving open the option for future structure. I guess I can just kind of pull that out.
I just wanted to make sure, because it says and the community, but if you are going to ask the community, we'll destroy the action itself.
Well, right, which is why we set up that working group that is hopefully a trusted group of individuals that won't leak that. But I hear you. Unwinding. This has been my concern: is unwinding this position is going to be challenging. I like to see that a ton of CVX is locked, so it's not like people will have to acquire CVX to sell, to front run what we'd be unwinding. And if Tetranode's already relocked and Frax is relocked and
Mochi
relocked. So if all these other DAOs and things that are playing these wars are already relocked, someone's going to have to buy up more convex to then front run us exiting. And yes, we have like an $8 million position. It wasn't like a at the time, I think Tetranode sold like 1 million CVX or something at $60 and walked away with an absolute shit ton of money. But so it's not like we're exiting that $1 million. We have 366,000 CVX. So I think that we could exit that a little bit more strategically, obviously with the lessons learned from the acquisition strategy, which I hope we don't need to beat a dead horse there. Excuse my language if that offends anyone. But I would have confidence that we could exit that. We will see slippage on that, obviously. Or not slippage, but we will see that the price continue to drop as we sell. So selling now doesn't really make as much sense to me specifically. But I don't want to speak for everybody. If people are wanting to be done and over it, and like let's actually have a better reassessed overall treasury strategy in place before we have investments like this, then we should unwind. But I only have my own personal opinions on that.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll say. And obviously this is not binding at all, and not even close to soft consensus. But if anybody here wants to kind of make their thoughts known on what they feel like is the best approach, I just kind of summarized Dietz's points from kind of the convex working group in the chat, and just put some letters underneath. So if you want to kind of vote on what your personal opinion, again, nothing binding, but just very, very rough temperature check from this kind of small group, that'd be helpful. The thing I'll say about Dietz's points about having a defined strategy before kind of making these bigger moves is, hopefully this kind of budget process, Doc, is somewhat approved, because that would also give us even more flexibility outside of the language in the KIP to make discretionary moves without getting front run, because there's definitely some terminology in there that allows us to do that. So yeah, timing is definitely an issue, but I guess the fundamental question is really just about locking here, or what's the best approach. Time is getting short.
Yeah, I think we need to present the community with the facts around, we need to reassess the feasibility of the primary objectives from KIP 5, and then I think we present that to the community, and then we'll be able to make kind of a more informed decision, and we can assess. So I think the two things to assess is how easy or hard it is to actually set up the gouge for a Rook factory pool, and we know what the benefits to that are, right? And I don't know, Dietz, I think it's also worth maybe exploring what are the alternative options to deepen liquidity, if not that way, right?
So you bring up a fantastic point. Actually, two great points. You said that there are the benefits of the factory pool. I don't know if they're as clear as they were when KIP 5 was first being written. So I'd love to at least revisit that and make sure that's restated for everybody. The second thing is about having other options. I think there are many secondary options about liquidity for Rook. I think an exciting one to look at is rumors of Tokamak having a new reactor round that we could get involved in, and you know, I would be pretty confident that I think that we could get involved in that as well. So you know, Tokamak is a really interesting project. What I like. So you're right. I think that doing some due diligence on other liquidity options is a very smart idea.
Tokamak is a very good example, and in fact, you know, that's kind of what I'm in fact working on a sort of a fork of. It's been announced, so I think I can talk about it. It's a fork of Tokamak essentially on Polygon, right, and doing the same type of liquidity direction. And so, yeah, if Tokamak is, I think that's definitely we should explore, right? Is it easier to set up a reactor on Tokamak? You know, it's a similar type of governance process, right? I mean, because they all just kind of copy Curve, where you know where you have to reach a quorum and then you have to get your proposal passed to set up that reactor, and then you can deposit in the reactor, and then there's kind of some additional sort of overhead. You have to decide how to direct the liquidity, right? So great, you know, we set up a reactor, we set up a rewards gouge for it. You know, we're incentivizing people to deposit to that kind of single-sided, you know, pool, and but then we have to manage the deployment, right? We have to. I mean, we can assume the network, you know, Tokamak will kind of optimally decide where to deploy liquidity, but we'll probably want to have a big say in that as well, and then that involves getting, you know, Toki tokens, right?
Right. So I will say that just off the bat, in transparency, I've had conversations with Tokamak about integration. Like we've had like biz dev conversations. I think they'd be happy to come talk about their reactors and if they're doing another core round on a community call or something, or an AMA here, if that's something we actually want to just move forward with independent of this.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe, you know, that's even something we could try to use as leverage with Curve/Convex, right? To be like, look, if you guys are going to cold shoulder us on governance, you know, we have our CVX position, but, you know, we have other options, and we're talking with Tokamak, right? And we can just sort of move there. And then, you know, so I think that, so I think that is a good point, right? We need to assess, you know, how difficult it is to get the Curve gouge and the factory pool set up. Maybe we should reassess the type of incentives we believe we could direct there with our voting power, since we never got kind of the full amount we wanted. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. I apologize. Do you have any idea how much liquidity we need to provide for that pool? Like, are we talking about we need to put $1 million of liquidity into that pool? Do we need to put
per factory pool?
Yeah. Do we need to put like $10 million? Like for it not to get destroyed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's another good question to understand. And I mean, we have the funds to do that. But
yes, and that's what things like buybacks and strategic reserves are for. But you know, I don't want us to put $5 million into a pool for our liquidity to then just get absolutely crushed by, you know, some bots, and we just, you know, fed bots with $5 million of our, you know, treasury liquidity.
Should be our bots, Deets.
I mean, it's going to be our keepers, but I'm just saying is that we don't need to fund our keepers. You know.
Well, it will be the same type of thing with Tokamak, right? I think generally how it works to bootstrap a reactor, right, is we would actually, I don't know exactly how they do it, but you know, I think typically you would swap. We do kind of like a DAO to DAO swap, giving them some Rook in exchange for like Toki to bootstrap the initial reactor. So there'd be a similar, you know, requirement around liquidity to bootstrap that too.
You know, something that I've been thinking about in terms of our liquidity and seeding liquidity is our current price. You know, if you think about KIP5, when it was written, you know, we were at $300-400, and stronger versus ETH. So, us being lower there, and we put a ton of liquidity here at these much lower levels, is it going to be pretty hard for us to claw out of where we're at in terms of price level? And then not only that, if we get bought up and that liquidity goes away again. And so we pretty much get killed by impermanent loss or real loss by seeding a bunch of liquidity at these levels.
Yeah, and now you're bringing up, I think, another question, which is kind of more strategic, which is, what is our objective with creating this liquidity? Like, do we really need, like, I think we were talking earlier, right? Like, if we want things like collateralization, that's where we need really deep liquidity. Someone, I forget, like made a very good point about that. Like, nobody is going to offer collateralization, and we probably don't want collateralization, right? If we don't have the type of liquidity that can support that, right? And be able to support, reasonable amount of liquidations and stuff like that. So,
Right.
But if we don't care about that, then it's worth asking, are we creating liquidity? What are we, I mean, it's good to have liquidity regardless. I think like it's just generally good. But now we're opening up some more strategic questions, Dietz, that we need to understand. Like, I would love to hear perhaps from the core team, like, how does liquidity help our strategy? I mean, clearly it helps the flywheel, for CG, just having more liquid Rook for keepers to enter and exit and stuff like that. Like, that's important.
Yeah, you bring up a fantastic point of needing and understanding our priorities in terms of, especially liquidity. I think if thinking about our tokenomics in general and how it's written and how probably liquidity maybe plays a factor into that, I would like to hear from the big boys. I'd love to hear from Hazard or Jay-Z or some of our devs about their thoughts about our liquidity. And so, I think that's something that, as a community, we can try and get that written and get that addressed in a town hall or something. I'll see what I can do about bringing that message forward, because I think that will probably drive some very necessary strategies that, I wouldn't say, full deployment of our treasury depends on it, but I would say that, even thinking about things like staking APY and how that's affected by liquidity, there are many things that are going to be affected by this.
Right. And I think, like, now, thinking about the tokenomics we've announced for the coordination game, like, I think it definitely is important, like, to have what, like you mentioned, people are going to be earning some, we want them to be able to do what they want with that. And you have keepers that are constantly going to be kind of in the market, to participate, in the meta game, sort of, in the bidding and etc. And you want it to be easy for, you don't want to have to tell a new keeper, well, you're going to have to take 10% slippage if you want to get enough Rook to be competitive in the meta game. So,
right.
So I think that, that is fairly clear. Like, we need we need liquidity. We need better liquidity. We have, this convex position that was trying to be in service of that, and we need to assess. I think it's time to assess our options there with that goal in mind.
So that would make me think that we need more time, which goes back to the root of this conversation, which was what to do with our CVX in the next couple days. So I think the best thing to probably say about that is to buy ourselves more time, which would not mean unrolling our position, which, two of our options would be that. So it would either be being okay as a community, taking a hit temporarily on bribe rounds, or B, relocking. I think those are our only two options, because
well, it seems like Deed's looking at vote, like, we have till March 30th, right, before the next round starts.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, we got to be in before the snapshot. So thinking about rallying the multi-sig, and like you need 24 hours for making sure execution happens in that window. So that's why I'm saying like get everything ready by the 29th.
It doesn't sound like all these different assessments with all these different parties can be done.
No,
I don't think so at all.
not unless a whole bunch of people step up.
I do really agree with not locking all of it though, and maybe keeping some of it liquid.
And so this sounds
Not a
like
huge percent or anything. Though.
it sounds like this should be announced as the big focus for town hall on Friday, where we're gonna get hopefully more participation on this, and we have the kind of options written out of what we're considering, and attach that to the announcement, and we should come together as a community and make a call on Friday if we can. What do you guys think about that?
I totally agree. I would also like to see what the people who were like behind KFP5 have to say about this. I think they have like the convex brain tag, just because I'm sure they know more than me, or they're probably very involved in the convex or curve ecosystems.
Yeah, there's only a few of us on this call that are a part of that. So you're right, is that this was kind of a surprise topic here. So it would be smart for us to try and push this messaging pretty widely that this decision kind of needs to be made. And I don't want to cause a uproar, which might already happen if people go and tweet about us doing this, which it is what it is. But I think that getting the right opinions here and us making smart decisions need to happen. But we can.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point that you made there on like optics. I think that's something we could do a bit better than we've done sort of at the past. And I mean, it is what it is, and it's Discord, and hopefully other people recognize that. But yeah, we should try and make the comment. And it's like, look, like it's not a knock against convex or curve. It's a business decision for us. So I think that's. We should, kind of orient the conversation as much towards that as possible. And then, people won't have firepower to use against us, ideally.
Everyone carries their own torch, and some people have different levels of threshold of when they want to set that on fire. So you can't really avoid someone getting upset. Someone's always going to get upset. So, I think that we just got to do what's best for our DAO and what everybody feels there's consensus on. And that's really what we can do. Well, looking at the clock, this has been a solid hour flying by. I think that to respect everybody's time, and unfortunately I have a call coming up, so I can't stay forever here. I think we wrap this up. We take some next steps and write them out here in the Discord and tag some folks, and we plan to talk about this as a group on Friday at Town Hall. Does anyone disagree with that plan of action here?
Sounds good, Deeds.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for everyone's thoughts. This was a really, really good governance session.
All right, folks. Well, then
thanks.
We'll
talk
ahead.
Hey, and guys, reminder, the community call tomorrow is at 9 a.m. Eastern. Moss is in Singapore, so the time's a little different this week.
Yeah, exciting. We're talking to
number 2 on the Bitfinex leaderboard.
Yeah, we're talking to a pretty cool market maker. So